Our school is distinctive in the application of a Christian worldview to a classical model. In other words, we're not just an academic institution, but we're a Christian institution. We look at the world from a Christian perspective, and then we use a classical method to teach our children that Christian worldview.
Classical education is really centuries old and was the model that was used in schools really up until the 19th century. Classical education can be divided into three parts that are clearly recognized and called together the Trivium. And they're referred to as the grammar, the logic, and the rhetoric.
The Trivium, maybe more than most approaches, really takes into account the way that children develop, the way God has made them.
In the early years, a child naturally enjoys reciting songs or facts or just expressing things that they've learned that day. And the grammar is exactly what's demanded of the child. It is the learning of facts, which they can then parrot back in a fashion that they enjoy doing.
In the grammar stage with our two younger children, they're developing incredible memories. It's easier to be able to memorize things when you're younger. And then as you get older, if you've already developed the ability to memorize things, that it continues and you can add on to that.
When the child begins to develop into that age where they are beginning to argue with us, and we all know what that's like, they're asking that question that becomes difficult, which is, well, why is it that way? That is the earliest sign that they're ready to enter into that logic phase.
This is a time when it's appropriate to teach them formal logic because of the fact that they want to examine what people are saying and probe for the truth or the falsehood in the statements that they hear.
To me, that is the biggest benefit of teaching Latin, is it teaches the students how to think. Latin is extremely logical, and so as they learn the rules of translation and so on in grammar, it really helps the students to think logically, which prepares them for logic when we have it, and algebra, balancing equations. A lot of those same kind of logical thinking is being developed as I teach them Latin.
The next phase that they move into is that phase of self-absorption, where their own ideas become important. And they're really exploring the world around them in order to decide how they want to express themselves. That's the rhetoric stage of the classical model of education.
Young people who, and they all have poetry in their spirits, whether they know it or not. This aesthetic sense that is inherent within young people at this stage makes it essential for them to be given rhetoric as a tool. They're being robbed if they're not being given rhetoric as a tool, because they crave it.
The popular notion of things is that heaven and earth are separate. At Christian Leadership Academy, we don't look at the world that way. We look at heaven and earth together. God created heaven and earth. We don't need to separate what is spiritual or what is biblical from the rest of the world and the rest of our educational process. It all fits together.
Mathematics is God's mathematics. He has created this world and the universe with order, and we can find that order and we can see it in how equations work themselves out. We see it in science. We see it in the scientific method where we discover God's laws, and so we benefit by studying God's universe. And so at CLA, we don't just teach religion over on the side and then mathematics and science and English and history. They are all under the sovereignty of God, and we see God in and through all those subjects.
If you do not understand that science serves the Creator, you cannot accurately interpret the bombardment we have daily of scientific information.
Children are barraged by ideas and words, and they have to be able to parse through those words to find out what's true and what is someone's fancy. The classical model strives to do that by equipping children with the ability to make the distinction between what is a fact and what is not a fact.
What we have seen, to put it simply, in terms of the application of teaching the children the tools of learning, as Dorothy Sayers called them, grammar, logic, and rhetoric, is that they coincide so nicely. They cut with the grain with the way children are. And so teaching them the fundamentals, for instance, of reading through phonics, the fundamentals of math through memorization of multiplication tables, the basic fundamentals of the grammar of speech, particularly foundational languages like Latin, and then on up through logic, formal logic, applying the argumentation skills that are so needed to understand fallacies in arguments from written or oral presentations and arguments, again, that they're going to hear constantly bombarded. And on up into rhetoric, being able to present themselves well, to make a speech, to write a convincing paper, to speak in front of an audience, to be articulate defenders of their faith. These are some of the benefits of a classical education as we're seeing it applied with a biblical worldview.
I've had 2 children who I've educated within the classical system, and they have blossomed. Duff is currently going to the University of Chicago. He's majoring in philosophy. His mind is clear, and it never would have happened without the classical model.
My top 3 choices were Hillsdale College, Grove City College, and Grace College, and I was accepted to all of them and received scholarships for the work I had done at CLA.
The relationships that are formed between the teachers and the students and the parents are so strong, and all are focused to help the child grow for their love of God, and help them grow as a person, and help them develop and understand what God has in mind for them for their life.
The kids at CLA are all one big group. From kindergarten to 12th grade, everyone knows everyone, takes care of everyone. The kids encourage each other, they work together, they really help each other, they practice together, they study together, they come in early and they have study teams and they work together. So there's always a sense of trying to build each other up.
If they know how to think well, they can learn anything.
The classical Christian education that Christian Leadership Academy offers is an old idea whose time has come again.
Enrolling your children, say, in the Christian Leadership Academy is a means of exercising your delegation of parents as parents in obedience to God. Not that that's the only place that you can do that, but it depends on what you want for your children. What high standards do you have for your children? What expectations do you have for your children? CLA offers a classical Christian education. It's worth the time to invest. It's worth the time to investigate, because the payoffs are immense. We want our children to stand on our shoulders. CLA offers something far more than we've ever received. It's a tough one because we haven't had that ourselves, but yet we want more for our children than we had.